Good evening. Thanks for tuning in. Top stories today. Homebuilder confidence is at historic highs, but more and more homeowners are falling behind on mortgage payments. The Trump administration tightens restrictions on Huawei even further, extending the ban to more of Huawei's affiliates. And the latest ranking of state competitiveness is out. We talked to the organization's chief economist, Jonathan Williams, to see why some states are more business-friendly than others. And the Democratic National Convention kicks off today in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's been mostly moved online, but that's disappointing local business owners and who were looking forward to a boost in traffic. Would you believe it? After everything we've been through, the S&P 500 hit a record high today. So did the Nasdaq. Nvidia and other tech stocks helping the gains. Rackspace Technology jumped after reports that Amazon is in early talks to invest in the cloud services. Lowe's and Home Depot rose on the expectations of increased quarterly sales from consumers with more time on their hands. The Dow fell 86 points or 0.31%. S&P 500 rose 9 points or 0.27%. The Nasdaq rose 110 points at 1%. And the U.S. housing market is another bright spot in the economy. Latest data shows home builder confidence is now matching record highs itself. But at the same time, more and more owners are falling behind on their mortgages.
New data shows that U.S. home builder confidence rose for a third straight month in August. The National Association of Home Builders and Wells Fargo Index rose 6 points to 78. That matches the record high in 1998. Record low interest rates have resulted in a surge in home buying, and builders are rushing to build new homes to meet the demand. But a separate report shows that more homeowners affected by the crisis have stopped paying their mortgages. According to the Mortgage Bankers Association, or MBA, the delinquency rate for residential mortgages rose to 8.2% in the second quarter. And for loans backed by the Federal Housing Administration, the delinquency rate has jumped to nearly 16%, the highest on record. The program is used by many first-time buyers and those with lower incomes. The numbers reflect the struggle many homeowners are facing during the crisis. Previous MBA data showed over 4 million homeowners had put off their loan payments as of the end of June. They are allowed to do this under a federal aid program.
The latest edition of Rich State, Poor States is out. It's a yearly report from the American Legislative Exchange Council that ranks states based on their economic outlook. It uses a whole range of factors to measure how business-friendly a state is. This year, Utah finished top. It's the 13th year in a row. New York finished last. Jonathan, awesome new report. Thanks for taking the time to come and speak with us about it.
Absolutely. Glad I could join you today.
And Jonathan, Utah, top of the pile for the 13th year in a row. It's quite the achievement. What exactly are they doing right over there?
They're doing a lot of things right in Utah. In our Rich States, Poor States report, now 13 years running, they have done so many things that have been ahead of the curve, I think, whether it's reforming these bloated state pension systems that have absolutely crippled states in the massive unfunded liabilities that have been out there, whether it's reforming their property tax system, or really preparing for the day when the federal government perhaps reduces aid to the states. Utah has been right there at the top of our ranking, one of the most competitive economies in America, and have kept tax rates low. You know, it's not just theory. This is really playing out in practice as we see Americans continue to move into Utah, and Utah is just booming right now. So it is a great place to invest. And one of the reasons why is not just the beautiful locale that they have there in Utah, but it's the good public policy that their state policymakers have now made for more than a decade.
And what's the kind of scale of migration that we're seeing?
I mean, we're seeing tens of thousands of people move into Utah over the last decade, where, you see some of the high tax states like California down more than 800,000 over the past decade. New York, even worse, is with one of the worst economic outlooks in America. But we continue to see this phenomenon where Americans vote with their feet, and they're voting very strongly away from states with high tax burdens and less economic opportunity as a result. And they're going to places like Utah, like Texas, like Florida, states that value a pro-business environment and better tax policy and more economic competition.
And you mentioned New York. What has happened to New York? It's, I believe, bottom of the pile in terms of economic competitiveness. It's the finance capital of the world, no?
Well, Wall Street has certainly helped keep the state afloat to some degree, but when we look at our measurement of economic competitiveness in rich states, poor states, New York has been 50th out of 50 for nearly every edition of our publication. And it's not, once again, it's not just a theory. New York is down more than 1.3 million Americans on net to the other 49 states over the last 10 years alone. And so oftentimes, while Wall Street is there, while GDP growth has been relatively good in New York, economies that are competitive, that are growing, and that have a good future ahead of them are not economies that are hemorrhaging population like New York has over the past decade. And so it is clearly a warning sign with some of the highest costs of doing business, highest taxes, and worst regulatory environment in the nation.
I saw in your report big reforms helped states like Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Delaware, Montana. What kind of reforms and what were some of the results?
Yeah, we've seen some really good movements in states over the years, some of those that you mentioned, as well as Indiana and North Carolina, both two states in the top 5 this year, have moved up dramatically over the years. And really, it's not rocket surgery, as my co-author Art Laffer likes to say. It is a good mix of prudent policy, keeping spending in check because states have to balance their budgets. They don't have printing presses like Washington, D.C., and they keep their costs down, and that allows them to reduce tax burdens, which gives, of course, individuals and businesses more of an incentive to come and invest in their states. States are all in competition with each other, and whether it's taxes, whether it's better regulation, things like right-to-work laws and freedom to work, that's been a big movement across the United States. States like Wisconsin that you mentioned that were a leader with Governor Scott Walker. So you have labor policies, you have regulations, you have taxes, all kind of this mix of how a state can be competitive. And we've seen some of the most inbound migration and business migration to those states that have improved and have overall good business climates.
Very interesting report and insights, Jonathan. I appreciate you taking the time to come and speak with us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
The Democratic National Convention kicks off today in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It'll mostly be virtual this year. That's disappointing for local organizers and businesses who were hoping to showcase the city, get a much-needed boost in business.
Last year, local and national Democratic leaders were celebrating Milwaukee getting the Democratic Convention. The convention will mostly be online because of the virus. Some locals, you could say, are crying in their beer.
It became clearer and clearer as time went on that this was the incredible shrinking convention. And then when Joe Biden announced he was not coming, that was kind of, that was sort of the final air being kind of let out of the balloon.
The convention was first scheduled for July. About 50,000 people were expected to attend and inject about $250 million into Wisconsin, a key battleground state. It would have been the first time Milwaukee hosted a presidential nominating convention.
It's like you get announced that you win the lottery, but you can't cash in the ticket. Going from very big numbers and renting out our space a couple times a day to, oh boy, is anyone going to come in when we open next Tuesday, convention-wise, right? So it was a gut punch.
Organizers were eager to tell the story of a resilient post-industrial city, home to thriving, diverse neighborhoods, a vibrant restaurant scene, and a growing tech industry.
I think that the fact that Milwaukee proved that we're a world-class city and we competed with so many other great cities and we won is the silver lining. We've arrived.
Former First Lady Michelle Obama will kick off the convention as the keynote speaker.
Domino's Pizza is looking to hire more than 20,000 people in the United States. Pizza chain's move follows other restaurant chains like McDonald's, Chipotle, and Dunkin'. They've added tens of thousands of workers in recent weeks. Domino's said the company would hire both part-time and full-time positions for customer service reps and even managers and assistant managers. The company is one of the few food chains to post a sales rise in the latest quarterly results. The chain has introduced contactless delivery along with car-side delivery options for carry-out orders. The strategy is meant to strengthen sales at a time most restaurants have closed their dine-in areas. And the U.S. continues tightening restrictions on telecoms company Huawei. It's adding dozens of its affiliates to U.S. blacklist. The Chinese tech giant has been avoiding U.S. sanctions by using third parties and alternative ways to access American technology.
The Trump administration is imposing more restriction on Huawei's access to U.S. chip technology. It's adding 38 Huawei affiliates from 21 countries to the U.S. trade blacklist, barring U.S. firms from doing businesses with them. That raises the total number of blocked Huawei affiliates to over 150. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said, quote, Huawei has continuously tried to evade U.S. restrictions imposed in May. Now, with the additional sanctions in place, he tweeted, quote, we dealt a direct blow to Huawei and the repressive Chinese Communist Party by further limiting Huawei's ability to acquire U.S. technology. President Trump told Fox News why his administration is expanding sanctions on Huawei.
We don't want their equipment in the United States because they spy on us. Huawei is a disaster.
The press release says the Department of Justice has indicted Huawei for stealing U.S. technology, conspiracy, wire fraud, bank fraud, racketeering, and helping Iran evade sanctions, along with other charges. Huawei's HiSilicon division relies on software from U.S. companies to design its chips. The U.S. will continue to restrict exports to Huawei and is urging U.S. allies and partners to join. Phil Zhou, NTD News, New York.
The Trump administration has unveiled its plan to promote democracy and free markets in South America. It's called the Western Hemisphere Strategic Framework. The initiative aims to facilitate investment opportunities in the region. The Miami Herald says National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien is going to negotiate deals in Colombia soon, and he's bringing the head of the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. O'Brien says that organization has a big checkbook. It's seen as a counter to China's Belt and Road Initiative. The Belt and Road allowed China to gain strategic and political influence around the world, including in Latin America. Many countries there are now in deep debt to China after signing on. The U.S. is investigating those loans. The new framework also calls for democracy and human rights to be restored in the socialist states of Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba. Instead of socialism, it wants citizen-centric governance to ensure government decision-making is in a country's long-term interest. And the administration has also approved an oil and gas leasing program in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, drawing praise from some but outcries from environmental groups.
The Department of the Interior approved a plan determining where oil and gas leasing will take place in a section of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, or ANWR. Congress approved the Arctic drilling program in 2017, and the department's Bureau of Land Management concluded drilling could be done without harming wildlife. The U.S. Geological Survey found the section, known as the 1002 area, contains between 4.3 and 11.8 billion barrels of oil. The area is also home to polar bears, caribou, and Arctic foxes. The question for whether to drill for oil in the area has been an ongoing political controversy for decades. Republicans tried dozens of times to allow drilling in ANWR, while Democrats blocked those efforts over fears of harm to the ecosystem. The deadlock was finally broken in 2017, when Republicans, led by Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski, pushed for drilling to be included in the 2017 tax cut bill. Interior Secretary David Bernhardt said the first lease could happen by the end of the year. The legislation projects that drilling in the area could raise $1 billion over 10 years.
A federal appeals court has overturned Tiffany & Co.'s $21 million judgment against Costco. It's over the sale of generic diamond engagement rings bearing the Tiffany name. The Court of Appeals said a lower court judge erred in finding Costco liable for selling the rings. The rings had a pronged setting known as a Tiffany setting. The judge said Costco's use of the word Tiffany was unlikely to confuse customers or make them think Tiffany endorsed the rings. But Tiffany said it expects to win in a retrial. Now, still to come this evening. Japan suffers its biggest hit on record, with GDP shrinking over a quarter. It's wiped out all of the country's gains since 2012. And German regulators launched an investigation into Amazon. They want to know if the tech giant started controlling prices during the pandemic. That and more after the break.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and bite-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
Japan's economy is emerging from its pandemic slump, but many analysts only expect a modest rebound.
Japan's economy saw the steepest decline on record in its second quarter as the global health crisis took a big bite out of consumption and exports. Japan is the world's third largest economy behind the US and China, and it shrank by nearly 28% from April to June, the biggest contraction in 4 decades. And it's wiped out all the gains from Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's Abenomics stimulus policies that began back in 2012. Japan has already deployed massive stimulus policies to cushion the blow from the health crisis, which hurt an economy already reeling from a sales tax hike last year and the US-China trade war. Japanese Economic Minister Yasutoshi Nishimura points to Tokyo's soft lockdown as one culprit.
We declared a state of emergency in April and May when GDP was weighed down heavily for the April to June quarter. We've artificially stopped economic activities, so this tough result comes from that impact.
The biggest thing that pulled down Japan's economy was private consumption, which plunged by a record 8.2%, with most consumers staying home. Demand for exports also took a huge hit, hurting major automakers like Mazda and Nissan, among the biggest drivers of Japan's economy, as well as their parts suppliers. The economy is now reopening and recovering after lockdowns were lifted in late May, but many analysts expect any rebound in the current quarter to be modest.
Britons bought and sold a record number of homes between mid-July and early August this year. Unlike the US, this summer there usually sees a bit of a slowdown, but the pandemic has switched things up in the UK housing market, just like everything else.
Lockdowns have got many reassessing things at home, and as scores of Britons decide to quit big city living, the housing market is moving at a pace. A record number of homes were bought and sold between mid-July and early August, bucking the usual summer slowdown. On Monday, property website Rightmove, which says it's used by 90% of British estate agents, reported the highest number of home sales since it began tracking data more than 10 years ago. And the most recent figures from the Bank of England showed a sharp rebound in demand for mortgages, although fewer loans were approved than before the pandemic. Average asking prices for August were 4.6% higher than a year earlier. Estate agents also told Rightmove that buyers had been given extra impetus to move by the temporary exemption from the property purchase taxes for homes costing up to £500,000 or around $655,000.
And according to local media, Germany has launched an investigation into Amazon. is looking into whether the tech giant stopped sellers from raising prices too much during the global health crisis.
Amazon may face a new probe in Germany, its second biggest market. The country's antitrust watchdog has reportedly launched an investigation of the online giant. That is according to the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung newspaper. It quotes the boss of the Federal Cartel Office as saying he's looking at Amazon's relationship with third-party merchants. In the first months of the global health crisis, the office reportedly fielded complaints from sellers who claimed they had been blocked from charging what Amazon said were overly high prices. While that might sound good to consumers, cartel investigators say Amazon has no business controlling prices. German officials haven't commented on the reports. An Amazon spokeswoman said the company's policies were designed to make sure sellers set competitive prices. She added that the firm had systems to take action against so-called price gouging. That's when prices are sharply raised to take advantage of high demand. Until 2013, Amazon prevented traders from offering their products via other sites at a lower price, a policy the antitrust watchdog forced it to abandon. Last year, it reached a deal with German authorities over its treatment of third-party merchants, ending a previous 7-month investigation. It seems the truce hasn't lasted very long.
And Australia's antitrust regulator says Google is spreading misinformation. It's after the tech giant published an open letter to Australians saying proposed antitrust laws could put free services and personal data at risk.
As of Monday morning, Australian internet users who search on Google have been presented with a small pop-up ad that tells them the way Aussies use Google is at risk. Australia's antitrust regulator, the ACCC, says Google's pop-up ad links Australians to an open letter containing misinformation. This comes as the authority is set to introduce a code that means social media giants like Facebook and Google will have to share revenue with Australian-based media companies for their content that generates revenue. Google Australia's managing director Mel Silver said the new regulation could lead to users' data being handed to other companies. She also warned that some free services are at risk. ACCC Chair Rod Sim conversely says Google won't need to charge any Australians for its free services. There is no expectation to share any users' data. He also added that Google's letter contains misinformation about the new code. In the letter, Google says the new law is set up to give big media companies special treatment, but revenues of an eligible news media company only need to exceed a little over $100,000 per year to benefit from the new regulations. Google also argues that it already pays media organizations millions of dollars and sends them billions of free clicks every year. Media companies and digital platforms have until August 28th to provide feedback to the Australian Treasury about the draft law.
And still to come, some chefs in the UK have found a new way to keep customers happy at a distance. Find out how after the break. Both fine dining and casual eateries in the UK are sending up meal kits for the most popular dishes. Once they're delivered, customers can add the final touches to their food in their own kitchens.
At Spanish restaurant Sabor, that has meant developing a range there called Sabor en Casa. Michelin star chef and founder Nieves Barragan's biggest challenge is simplifying how amateur home cooks can recreate the fine dining experience of her restaurant.
We have more experience opening a restaurant, but this was new for us. So you have to think every single detail, how you will make a mistake at home or what you will need.
Sabor en Casa sells two options. One box at $75 and a larger version with more dishes inside for $91. And the easy Michelin-starred food has been a hit. It's also meant Barragan can bring more of her staff back to work.
And that is the main thing, to maintain the team, people back to work, and also we are proud to create something new which has been successful. So it means a lot of good things. It's very positive, super positive.
Barragan thinks they could become a permanent fixture. She just needs to get another kitchen. Smokestack is another restaurant sending out meal kits to homes up and down the UK. But chef and director David Carter says getting the food delivered by courier to customers in good condition was tricky in the early days.
It was a mess. But it was also maybe our fault with packaging. We certainly changed a lot of things around, but now we think we kind of got it right. But I think it's sort of quite demoralizing knowing how it leaves here to less than 24 hours, seeing what it looks like there, you're like, it's not what we sent.
Customers can choose what goes into their delivery, including meat, various condiments, and even cocktails. Kits include everything required to make pulled pork or brisket buns start at $31 and serve 4 people. Like Sabor, Smokestack has an eye on continuing the delivery service long term. If they remain popular by early next year, Carter says he'll have to make some changes.
And that's the latest business updates for today. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.